You're listening to The Last Shadow of Butch Cassidy, a six-part Western mystery told in whispers, wind, and gunpowder. My name's Tom, and for the next 6 hours, I'll be your voice through the dust of old trails, the silence of forgotten towns, and the echoes of a man history said was long gone. Butch Cassidy. Some say he died in Bolivia in 1908. Others, they say he came back. This is not just a story about a man. It's a story about what we choose to remember and what refuses to be forgotten. So, pour yourself a drink, find a quiet place, and settle in. Because once we begin, the West doesn't let go so easy. The shadows that don't fade. Some names fade with time. Others, they linger. Like dust in the wind, they settle into every corner of the land, into the bones of old saloons and the cracks of forgotten train tracks. One of those names was Butch Cassidy. My name's Elias McCrae. Back in 1922, I was a young reporter working for the Denver Evening Herald. I had a modest reputation for chasing the ghosts of the West. Old outlaws, Civil War deserters, turned ranchers, barkeeps, who swore they'd once served whiskey to Billy the Kid. You get enough of those stories, and you start to see patterns. You stop laughing at legends. You learn that sometimes, just sometimes, the wildest tales hold a kernel of truth. It started with a letter. No return address. The handwriting, shaky, old, like it came from someone who didn't write much anymore. It read, "Cassidy's alive. Not for much longer. Go to Robbers Ridge." That was it. Cassidy, Robert Leroy Parker to some, Butch Cassidy to everyone else, was believed to have died in 1908 in a Bolivian shootout alongside his partner, the Sundance Kid. A legendary final blaze of gunfire in a foreign land. But for years afterward, rumors kept drifting in, like smoke that wouldn't clear. Whispers in taverns. A man spotted in Wyoming who walked like Butch. An old rancher in Oregon who knew too much. Cassidy had become more than a man. He was a myth refusing to die. I packed a bag and boarded the Southern and Central, heading toward the Utah border. My destination? A forgotten patch of dust called Robbers Ridge, a place that once gave shelter to thieves, dreamers, and men who thought they could outrun their past. Just over 100 people lived there. It sat beneath a red stone cliff that turned blood-colored at sunset. No hotel, one saloon, a post office that opened twice a week. But everyone knew about the man who lived in the hills. They called him Old Bo. He didn't come into town, didn't buy his own food, paid a boy once a month to drop supplies at the edge of a ridge and leave. Once, a local deputy tried to check on him and was greeted with a warning shot in the dirt. No one had seen his face in years. A ranch hand said, "That old man's got a voice like dry gravel and eyes like he's watching the past come back." A kid told me, "He's got a brown hat just like the outlaws in picture books. Maybe he's a ghost." The bartender, half drunk, swore, "He sang once, real soft when he thought no one could hear. Same song Cassidy used to hum. Don't fence me in." Sound of boots on gravel. Wind blowing through mountain trees. I made my way up the ridge, half a day's hike through scrub and sandstone. And then I saw it. A small wooden shack, slanted, weather-worn, smoke curling up from a crooked chimney. Windows shut tight. I knocked. Nothing. I turned to leave. Then a voice, low, raspy, behind me. "You looking for Cassidy?" He introduced himself as Bo. Didn't offer a handshake, didn't smile. He looked tired, but not weak. His hands were still strong. His eyes, though, they didn't flinch when they looked at mine. We sat by the fire. He handed me coffee, cold as truth. Then he said, "You believe in memories, Elias?" I said, "I believe in facts." He chuckled. "Then you're in the wrong story, son. Around here, the truth's just the best lie anyone ever told twice. That night was the beginning, not of a headline, not of a news story, but of a confession, a reckoning, and a journey back through the smoke and gunpowder of the last days of Butch Cassidy. This is the story of what really happened, of what we lose when legends die, and what we find when they don't. Episode 1, A Letter from the West. You're listening to The Last Shadow of Butch Cassidy, a 6-hour Western mystery, told in quiet voices and loud memories. I'm Tom, and for the next while, I'll be your guide through gunsmoke, newspaper ink, and long-forgotten trails. This is a story of what happens after the last shot is fired, after the headlines fade. It's the story of a man they said was gone, and what happened when someone came looking for him. Now, let's begin where all Western stories ought to begin, with a stranger on a train and a letter without a name. Denver, Colorado, June 1922. The air smelled like ink, whiskey, and a storm that wouldn't come. I was 33 years old, 2 years too young to feel tired, but 10 years too old to believe in legends. I worked the human interest beat for the Denver Evening Herald. My desk sat by a broken radiator and a cracked window. And on that day, I found a letter waiting on my typewriter. No return address, paper yellowed, faint scent of tobacco. Handwriting crooked, like the author had arthritis or had seen too much. It said, "Cassidy's alive, not for long. Robbers Ridge, Utah." No signature, no date, just those 3 lines. Cassidy, the Butch Cassidy, the Wild Bunch, the man whose death in Bolivia was printed and reprinted for the last 14 years. I'd chased ghosts before. Most of them turned out to be drunks, hoaxes, or old men trying to sell a story for $10 and a bottle of rye. But something about this felt different. Robbers Ridge, Utah, population 121, a mining town that never struck gold and forgot to die. The mountains around it looked like old men hunched over, the kind who knew too much and told too little. Everyone knew about a man up in the hills, a recluse, no visitors, no church, no voice in town matters, paid a boy once a month to leave supplies by a boulder. They called him Bo. One barkeep whispered, "I saw him once. Leaned on a cane like he was born with it. Still looked like he could shoot your buttons off." A rancher claimed he's got a scar under his chin. Cassidy had one just like it. The sheriff didn't say a word, just looked at me too long and walked away. It took me 4 hours to climb the ridge. No trail markers, just instinct and rumor. Then I saw it. A cabin, slouched like it was tired. Cedar wood, nailed by hand. A smoke trail from the chimney, thin like the last breath of winter. I knocked. Nothing. Knocked again. Still silence. Looking for Cassidy? He was thin, leathery, wore a brown duster coat and a hat that had seen more sun than most horses. His eyes, sharp, cold, but curious, like he'd already read my obituary and was wondering if I'd live up to it. "You got a pen in that coat of yours, reporter? Then come inside. I'll tell you what I remember. But I warn you, truth in these hills don't walk in straight lines." That was the first day. I came looking for a ghost. What I found was a man full of stories, and a truth so twisted it bent like smoke from a bullet hole. Butch Cassidy was dead. Everyone knew that. Everyone. Except the man who might still be him. Next time, on The Last Shadow of Butch Cassidy, a tale of trains, gang hideouts, and the woman who saw it all. Don't ride too far. We're just getting started. Episode 2, The Man Called Cassidy. Last time on The Last Shadow of Butch Cassidy, a reporter named Elias McCrae climbed a lonely ridge in Utah and met a man some folks say has been dead since 1908. In this episode, we sit down with that man, and what he tells us may change everything we think we know about the legend of Butch Cassidy. Elias. The cabin was dark, but warm, smelled like cedar, old tobacco, and something ancient. He didn't offer a name, not at first. He just poured the coffee, handed it over without a word, and stared at the flames like they were whispering secrets only he could hear. Bo, you want to know about Cassidy? Fine, but don't come in here expecting saints and shootouts. You want to hear about the man, not the myth? Then listen close, and don't interrupt. Bo. Back then, they called me Butch. I ran with a gang they named the Wild Bunch. We weren't wild. We were organized. We had rules. We didn't kill unless it was necessary. And we made damn sure we didn't steal from folks who couldn't afford it. I planned, Sundance shot, and the rest followed. Bo. First job I ever pulled was a payroll train out near Telluride. Clean, quiet, no blood, just good timing and nerves made of iron. We got out with $15,000 in union money, and not a soul fired a bullet. That's when I realized I wasn't built for farming. Elias. He talked like someone who wasn't proud, but wasn't sorry either. He spoke of robberies the way other men talk about construction projects, blueprints, schedules, moving parts. For him, crime was math, not chaos. Bo. Then came Sundance. Harry Longabaugh, best shot I ever saw, had a temper like a cracked whip, but a good heart under it, if you knew where to look. And then, Etta. Bo. Etta Place was Sundance's girl, but don't let that fool you. She could ride, shoot, lie, and read Latin, all before breakfast. She kept us human. And when things started falling apart, she was the one who held us together. Elias. There was something in his voice when he spoke her name. Not regret, but distance. Like he'd locked her away in a room in his memory and only visited with clean hands. Bo. We got too good, too bold, and Pinkerton came down on us like a hammer. We split up. Sundance and I headed south. Argentina, Chile, Bolivia. Always riding, always watching. Never resting. Elias. He didn't say how many friends he'd lost. He didn't have to. His silence filled in the names. Elias. So I asked him, straight, are you Butch Cassidy? Bo. I was, a long time ago. Now I'm just a man who survived someone else's legend. Elias. He didn't blink, didn't flinch, and that's when I knew, whoever this man used to be, he was telling the truth. He says his name is Bo, but his past says something else. In the next episode, Argentina, betrayal, and the day the bullets stopped. Join us as the story rides south, into exile, and into the final days of the man they called Butch Cassidy. Episode 3, South of the Border. Last time, on The Last Shadow of Butch Cassidy, Bo, an old man in the Utah mountains, claimed he once wore the name Butch. But legends don't just die, sometimes they run. In this episode, the story takes us south, to exile, to distance, and to a kind of silence no bullet can break. Elias. He gave me a tin box, inside letters, dozens of them, yellowed, folded, addressed to no one, written in Cassidy's hand. Most were never sent. Bo, November 2nd, 1902, Cholila, Argentina. The land here is beautiful, vast, the kind that makes you forget who's chasing you. Sundance thinks we're safe. Etta smiles more here. And me? I wake up every morning with my hand still near the gun. Bo, we bought land, built a small ranch under fake names. I was James Ryan. Sundance became Harry Place. And Etta, she was always just Etta. She didn't need a new name. She never ran from anything. Elias, they tried to go straight for a while, but peace is a hard thing to hold when your hands are used to steel. Bo, we paid our taxes, rode with neighbors, helped mend fences, but the law's long arm stretches wide. Pinkerton men followed us, even to Patagonia. I knew the quiet wouldn't last. Elias, he told me about the Banco de Tarapacá job, Bolivia, 1908, their last known robbery. Bo, we were desperate. Money was thin. Sundance was tired. Etta was already gone. She left without a word, just a note on the table. You both belong to a world I don't want to survive. That last job, it was rushed. We got the money. But the town reacted fast. Too fast. Within a day, we were surrounded in a boarding house in San Vicente. Oh, we were cornered. Sundance took the window. I took the door. We held them off for maybe 30 minutes. Then Sundance got hit. Chest. Bad. He looked at me and said one thing. Don't let him hang me. I nodded, and I did what he couldn't. Elias. You killed him? I set him free. Bo, I walked out the back. The soldiers were still circling. I crawled through a ditch, followed the drainage south for 2 days. And then I disappeared. Bo, it took me a year to make it back. I was no longer Butch Cassidy, just an old man with no friends and too many sins. Elias. So why Robbers Ridge? Because this place never expected anyone to come back, and it forgot how to ask questions. He ran. He buried the name, but the ghosts followed. In the next episode, Elias digs deeper and finds out he's not the only one looking for the truth. And in the quiet spaces between campfires and questions, something stirs. Episode 4, The Woman Who Vanished. Last time, on The Last Shadow of Butch Cassidy, Cassidy told us about Argentina, about the final heist, about a man dying in Bolivia with a bullet in his chest, and another in Mercy. But there's a name that lingers in the spaces he avoids, Etta Place. This episode, we go looking for the woman who vanished, Elias. She was the ghost in his story, the last name spoken softly, the one he didn't try to explain. After our second night talking by the fire, I asked him directly, "What happened to Etta?" He stared at the embers and just said, "She left us before the fire got too close." That was all, but I wasn't done with her. Elias. I took a train to Salt Lake, then a coach to Elko, Nevada. I was chasing a rumor, an old article from 1911 about a Miss Eleanor Parker, a school teacher with no past and a Colt revolver hidden in her dresser. The description? Brown hair, green eyes, sharp tongue. She arrived in town in 1909, alone. Elias. Locals said she was polite but distant, carried herself like someone used to danger, taught literature, was especially fond of Robert's service poems. But in 1914, she vanished. Mrs. Louise Danner. She was a sweet one, but there was weight behind her smile, like she'd lived through fire and walked away without a scratch. Once, some traveling salesman got rough with her at the general store. She didn't raise her voice, just looked at him, and I swear to God, he walked out like a boy who'd seen his father's belt. Bo, I don't know where she went. Maybe back east, maybe farther south. But wherever she is, she chose peace. Sundance and I, we weren't built for that. There's a kind of freedom Etta wanted, not the outlaw kind, the quiet kind, and we couldn't give her that. Elias, do you miss her? Every day. But missing her is easier than watching her fade. Elias, inside one of Cassidy's old trunks, beneath a false bottom, I found a photograph. 3 people on horseback, Butch, Sundance, and her, Etta. On the back, it said, "Before the border, before the end." Etta Place, a woman erased from history. Or maybe she erased herself. Next time, Elias discovers a second visitor to the ridge. And not everyone comes with questions. Some come with unfinished business. Stay with us. This story's not done riding yet. Episode 5. A Visitor with No Name. Last time on the last shadow of Butch Cassidy, a name returned, Etta Place. A memory, soft but sharp. But memories don't stay buried forever. In this episode, someone climbs the ridge. Someone who doesn't knock. And Cassidy's past finally catches up. Elias. It was just after sunrise. I was making coffee while Cassidy, no, Bo, was sharpening his knife like he had something else on his mind. Then he froze. Ears perked. Silence. A sound only an old outlaw would recognize. Bo. Don't move. We're not alone. Stranger. Well now. Didn't think I'd find you still breathing, Butch. Elias. He was tall, weathered, one eye clouded, a long coat, hiding something heavier than age. Cassidy looked at him, the way men look at tombstones. Bo. I buried you in Chihuahua. Stranger. You buried someone. Wasn't me. Elias. His name was Jonas Hartley, former Wild Bunch member. Left for dead after a failed train job in Mexico. 1903. He'd been hunting Cassidy ever since. Jonas. 14 years, Parker. 14 years watching my name rot while you lived under fake ones. Pinkertons never found you. You know who did? Me. Bo. I thought you were gone. Jonas. Yeah, so did you. Elias. They sat across from each other like 2 rusted pistols. No one raised a voice. No one needed to. Jonas, you left me to die for that payroll. Etta begged you to turn back, and you told her we were already ghosts. Well, now look at us. Bo, you want revenge, Jonas? Or you want to know why I didn't turn around? Jonas, I want the truth. For once, and I want to hear it from your damn mouth. Bo, that night, I made a choice. You were bleeding. Sundance was drunk. Etta was scared, and I was tired. Tired of burying brothers, so I kept riding, and I never forgave myself. Jonas. Then say it. Say my name, and say you left me. Bo. Jonas Hartley. I left you, and I've paid for it. Every day since. Jonas. That's all I needed. Not lead, not blood, just truth. You've got a good fire here, Cassidy. Don't let it die before you finish the damn story. Elias. He left before sundown, never looked back. And Cassidy, he didn't say a word for the rest of the night. Some ghosts don't haunt you to kill you. They haunt you to hear their name. Next time, Elias uncovers the final page of the legend, and a letter appears that changes everything. Episode 6. The Letter and the Gun. Last time, on the last shadow of Butch Cassidy, a ghost knocked on the door and demanded a name, and Butch Cassidy gave it, along with the truth. But this time, it's not about who comes to the door. It's about what was hidden behind it. Elias. Cassidy didn't say a word the next day. He just sat by the window with a cup of coffee that had gone cold before he poured it. The fire burned low. I think a part of him had gone with Jonas. So, while he stared into silence, I went searching. Not to betray him, but because I had to know how this story really ends. Elias. Behind the chimney stones, tucked in a hollow, too careful to be accidental, I found a box. Inside, a gun. A Colt, .45 with 6 bullets, and one name scratched in the grip. Sundance. And beneath it, a letter, unopened, addressed to EP, to be delivered if I don't return. Elias. August 3rd, 1908, San Vicente, Bolivia. If this finds you, it means I didn't make it out. I want you to know it was always the plan for one of us to survive. Sundance was too proud. He'd never run. I tried to change that. I failed. Etta, if you're reading this, I'm sorry for everything I dragged you into, for loving you too quietly, for staying too long in a world built to collapse. If there's still a world where a man like me can grow old, maybe I'll find my way back to it. But if I don't, remember me as the one who ran so you could stop running. Elias. I read it aloud, every word. And Cassidy, he didn't stop me. Bo, that letter wasn't for anyone but her. Elias. Then why keep it? Bo. Because keeping it meant a piece of her was still here. I never mailed it, never knew where she went. Hell, maybe I didn't want to find her, because what if she'd stopped waiting? Elias. There was one more question, the one no one had dared ask directly. Elias. You said you shot Sundance. But what really happened, Bo? Bo. He asked me to do it. He was bleeding out. Bolivians were seconds away. I had 1 bullet left. I gave it to him, and then I ran. The papers said we both died. Let him. Elias. I stayed another day. We didn't talk much. He packed a bag, stared at the sunrise like it owed him something. Bo, you came for a story. Don't write it like a legend. Write it like a man who didn't know when to stop. Elias. He left before I did. No note, no goodbye. Just the Colt, the empty chair, and a fire that finally went out. Some guns were never meant to fire again. Some letters were never meant to be sent. And some men were never meant to be found. Next time, one last ride, one last page, and the truth behind the shadow of Butch Cassidy. Episode 7, The Last Shadow. Last time on The Last Shadow of Butch Cassidy, a letter, a gun, and a man with nothing left to hide. In this final chapter, Elias must decide, does the world deserve the truth? Or is the shadow all that's left? Elias. Toiroi Robbers Ridge, Vaumot boy sang thang chen, mang theo ho song hong hon jan, mot bak tuchua baugio juach gui, va kau chuyen hong ai muon tin. Ki toi trolei Denver, tong bien tap hoin gay, by Cassidy konsong dara, toi jap, hong, Cassidy jan chet, hung kong phai o Bolivia. Elias, toi viet bai, roi toi cheno, viet lai, roi jot, hong phai vei toi so bi chola jien, ma vai toi hio, joy ki, so that hong ku roi ai ke. Bo, hai Cassidy, hong kan George kiai wen, ong chikan George je yen, bo, Elias, neo kau viet lai kau chuyen ne. Chung bat jiao bang viet toi song sot, hoi bat jiao bang viet toi jam bien mat, vi kai shet, koki le kach koi kungje mot ten kop jok tatu, Elias, ong hoi han hong, bu, toi ties. Tiech vi chan song kwa lau ma kong ko ebiet ten dat ko amin. Nung hoi han, hong, toi jan chon kon juong, ba toi jan koi jen kung. Elias, Butch Cassidy. Ten koop hau hiep, ten koi ki joy mat voi hong sung. In goi janong honk bao gio juok chon kat, and vok kole,
Kong chua bo gyo tuk su chet. Kon hang kon dung woi. Hun hung chech bong. Hong bao gyo roi khoi vung jat mahutung chetron. Elias. Toi kong gui bai viet. Hong toi chi buk tu. Guichen mot jia chimon hoi o New Mexico. Noi ko mot truong hok ku. Tong ko mot ko kiao mang ten kach. Ko de etta sin han George. Ko de ko ay jan jik sa hon ka Cassidy tung jen. Hung neo ko icon song. Kok shung jang George ken hung don koi kung ong via cho ko. That was the story. A train, a ridge, a man, and a shadow that outlived them all. Elias never published the tale, but he carried it like a gun with no bullets. Heavy, honest, and finally, at rest. Thank you for riding with us through the last shadow of Butch Cassidy. Until next time, keep your fire low, your saddle steady, and never trust a man who hums to himself on the trail. The end.